Hello everyone, and welcome to the bonus live this week, Saturday. I'm here at Cindy's Art Beat, high atop the pavement in downtown Fairfield, Iowa. And she's open today and is open every day, Wednesday, well, not every day, Wednesday through Saturday, 1 to 5 on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and 12 to 4 on Saturdays. So I've got this image going here. It's a view of the driftless area just east of Iowa in Wisconsin. And I wanted to treat trees. So far we've treated them close up. I wanted to do something where they're a little farther away and we deal with the idea of atmospheric perspective. So, green summer image. First thing I'm going to do, you can see is it's the typical Midwestern situation of bands. I'm going to find my key horizontal, which is Iowa, and then here we get into hi Virginia. Here is, we're in Wisconsin proper. I'm going to try and make a little more of these areas in here to break up some of that green. The green is kind of relentless, and bit of a diagonal, that's helpful. I'm going to make the area where the farm is here a little bigger, give it a bit more oomph. And I'm going to move it a little further to the right because, again, we're getting a little bit too close to making a bullseye. I'm also going to pitch this a little bit that way. This pitches this way, that pitches that way. And I think that will be helpful. I'm going to level it out back here, though, where the corn is. There's a second ridge. We've got a wonderful Z that we can make. We can go like this and then come up here, and then we can go out on that. So whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I'm always looking for things like that, and if I can't find them, sometimes I'll make them. So all of the materials I'm using today, you can get at Cindy's here. This is our extravagant local art store. We have paper, brushes, paints, everything. So I am just indicating where I want some of these things to happen. Tree lines. Mainly I'm going to paint it. I do want to find where the buildings are. Hi, Diane. So I've got a little shed down here, and it's mainly the roof I need to make happen. It's a parallelogram. There's another one smaller over here. Then I've got these verticals of these two silos. And then this hip roof barn. So first I'm going to make a parallelogram to get the general Yeah. And then I'm going to make it a hip roof. So it's easier for me to draw that than to just make it a normal slanted roof than it is to try and draw that cold. So that may be a tip that you find helpful. There's a small lean-to shed in front of that, and some miscellaneous who knows what behind it. More buildings. There is a house back there.
Hey, I guess so.
Hello.
We're on time. We're not early enough.
Oh no, you just started.
Good. Well, I'm getting it.
Sure. So I'm going to tuck the house in so that you just sort of see it.
You're gonna do what? Oh, gotcha.
And
Well, you don't have to explain.
hide it in there. So, bridges.
You have to wait for people, though, right?
Well, I've got people are watching from all over too.
What do you mean?
We're live.
Oh my God. Am I live? Was I on there?
Just a little. So,
Okay.
So
I'm
you-
sorry. I didn't know that.
oh no, that's okay. So you can watch this online, or you can, if you're in Fairfield, come on in, and we can. I'm going to be here till 4, and we can chat. There's some lovely little buildings all back here, which I think I'm going to use as tiny little punctuation marks. And then we come to the thing that is the biggest problem perhaps with this, is the bands where we go from the young corn here to appears to be beans behind it in a second field. I'm going to stop the Z with a tree. It's kind of a, if I'm sending the eye off to this corner, I want to kind of slow it down, stop it, and send it back this way. So we're always directing the viewer's eye through the picture. So if anytime we can find ways to slow it down, speed it up, take it where we want to go, it'll help. Hi, Julie. I may put some here. Now, this goes straight across. That's kind of a deadly thing. Horizontal in a horizontal picture. I'm going to tilt it a little bit to the left. So we're just starting to create this wonderful Z that leads the eye back through. Now, do I want to make a big deal of the sky? So there's, I've been using a 3B or 2B pencil. 2B or 3B works great. Something that's soft enough to be dark, but not so soft that it dissolves when we put a wash on. I'm going to be using big mops. I've got my Escoda mops. I'm going to be using the stiffer nylon ones. Maybe using the Oriental brush, possibly. The palette is, I get the M. Graham paints. We have these here. Ultramarine, cerulean, cobalt turquoise. We're at the moment I'm out of cobalt. I need to get some Prussian. Probably going to use that a lot. Because we got to mix some greens today, and the Holbein lavender, which I can use to make very grayish greens. Yellow ochre, cad yellow light, the Nicolazzo yellow, burnt sienna, the alizarin crimson permanent, and the cad red, probably cad red straight, and neutral tint. I might use a neutral tint, we'll see. So 140 pounds Saunders cold press. The monitor is sideways. I don't know why that is. I'm going to work my way down, and I'm going to start with some blues, modify my blues. So I'm going to get some water in here. And we're going to do a beaded wash, and I'm going to turn that blue slightly green, grayish green, and then a yellower green. And I'm going to variegate these greens as I come forward in space. Try to leave some, maybe some divots. I'm going to paint around the roofs and the highlights on the silo tops, these little buildings back there. And let's see, maybe not that big a mop. I'll get the size 14. So, cerulean, I think, for the sky. Very pale. And what I'm going to do, this is a very runny mix of paint. You can see it run. And I may have to put a little bit of alizarin in it, but it always behooves you to mix more than you think you're going to need, because you can always change the color as you go. Pale, pale sky. Here we go. Now let's see. We've got a Z. Can I put a Z in the sky? Yeah. So there's the I'm going to add a wee bit of the alizarin in that to make a slightly purplish color, and come down underneath, maybe leave a few light bits. I'm picking up on the bead, catching it from underneath. So get some of the haze. This is the drift. If you're not familiar with the driftless region, it's a section in the upper Midwest where the glaciers from Canada or farther north didn't go. So they didn't, as they receded and reformed and retreated, they didn't scrape things dead flat there like they did. They didn't scrape things as quite as flat there as they did elsewhere in the Midwest. And so the soil quality is a little bit different. I'm going to mop up some of this. I'm at an angle which is fairly low. And then I'm going to add to this, I'm going to take some of that over here, ultramarine, and a bit of the lavender. Thicker paint. See, this doesn't run as fast as the previous mix, so it's less runny. And I'm going to come right underneath this where I've just painted. And I'm going to wait a second here so that I get a soft edge. So there's not a lot of paint on the brush. And I'm going to come up and I'm just going to kiss that edge. So the new paint will join with the old paint and make that very far away atmospheric haze. So the trick to treating trees with our tree series here the further away, you have to account for the atmospheric perspective, so you're going to get grayer, and we're going to get bluer, and depending on the time of day or the weather, could be lighter, might be darker. Now into this, I'm going to begin to mix a little bit of the cad yellow to get a grayish green. A good gray green is the Holbein lavender and the cad yellow. And this is where I'm going to start ignoring these darker tree lines, and I'm just going to be doing the greens of the field, and I'm going to try and skip around where I might want to put some of these little buildings. So painting anything that's darker can be painted right through, because we're going to paint on top of that later. Let's have some buildings over there. Try not to space them too evenly. This is let's put a little bit more of the lavender in that to make it grayer. We want it to look far away. However, if you're not sure, go ahead and mix it a little, what should we say, a little more vibrant or vivid than you think you may need if you're not sure. And that way, it's easier to make a vivid color dull. It's very hard later. It's very hard to make a dull color vivid. So I'm going to add to this maybe a little bit of yellow ochre to get a different character of green, and I look at that and I say, that's too much. Let's go back and get some lavender, or maybe let's even get some cerulean. Yeah, okay. When I get down to here, more lavender. The idea here is to variegate these greens. So that it's not like painting the bathroom wall. Now, a lot of this that I'm painting now is actually going to get covered up with the darker trees. And I'm going to go to a smaller brush, maybe the Oriental, because it holds less paint. And I want to start painting around things soon. Off to the side here, I'm going to take some of that and some of the brighter yellow. And I'm going to try to make these fields in here a little bit more prominent or vivid. So, hi Cindy. Hope it's warmer down there in Quincy than it is here. It's been rather cold of late. I can paint through the trees, I just have to miss the barn. It's going to look like a tie-dyed t-shirt for a while. The character of the image doesn't really come out until we get to applying the darks. So a little bit different green over here. Again, I don't have to worry if I get into these trees, I just have to miss my buildings. A little bit more yellow as I come into this area here. Again, I don't have to worry about the trees, just miss the buildings. Even the sides of the building, which will be in deep shade. let's get a very bluish green going off to the side. Now I'm getting down into this, what appears to be a soybean field. I didn't have a very good phone when I took this picture. Okay. I'm going to make this a bluer, more turquoise-ish green. And I'm going to need a lot of it, so that's going to happen down here in this bigger pocket. So yellow ochre and turquoise. One of the ways to make interesting greens is to kind of have a look at your yellows, see which are my vivid yellows, which are my dull yellows. In this case, yellow ochre is the dull yellow, cad yellow is the vivid yellow. Then look at your blues. In my instance, my most vivid blue is probably the cobalt turquoise. So my most vivid green, well, that probably is a little more vivid than I want. So I'm going to gray it down with a bit of lavender. So you can pretty much figure that if you mix your most vivid green, yellow, with your most vivid blue, that's going to be the brightest green you can get. If you mix your least vivid yellow with your least vivid blue, then you're going to get something that's very green. It'll be green, but it'll be very dull. And with the combinations in between, you can get something that bridges the gap. So I'm also hoping to get, I'm going to just throw in some of that to get a little bit of everything, just to get some variation. Again, I don't want it to be like painting the bathroom wall. There ought to be a little bit of variation in this natural substance. Even though they're probably plant geneticists are working overtime to make them as identical plant to plant as they possibly can make them. Now, as I get down front, I do need a much more vivid green. I do have a third yellow. It looks like brown, but nickel azo yellow is actually a rather vivid yellow. So that and ultramarine blue is going to give me yet a different green. And well, let's try some cerulean till I get something that's, yeah. Now, in this instance, I'm going to kind of be scruffy with my brush. I want to get some variegation in here because closest to me is where I'm going to have my greatest degree of texture. And we may even start splattering a little bit. Change it up. If I get a little bit of blossoming, that's good. The board is at about a nearly 45-degree angle, leaning that way, so that the gravity is pulling the water down to the bottom, and that helps me figure out helps me monitor where I know the surface of the paper is going to be wetter, and up top I know it's going to be a little drier. So I'm going to leave some of those flecks in there to possibly indicate sparkle on the leaves of corn there. This surface, the water has started to sink down into the paper. So when I put this in there, it melts and makes a slight blossom. and will hopefully, fingers crossed, give me a little bit of texture. Like I say, we're at the holy mess stage of the thing. All right, more ultramarine blue, more of the Nicolazzo yellow. Now that's very slow moving paint. And what I'm going to do is into this surface, which is still a little bit wet, I'm going to splatter that, and it's going to just about melt. I'm being very careful to point the brush downward so that I don't get a bird in the sky. I got something there, but that's okay. I might actually even, now those are random marks. I'm going to make some deliberate marks as well. So more of that, see, very slow moving paint. Drag the brush. Because the surface is wet, or there's still some moisture on the surface, a lot of it has soaked in, there's going to be a bit more texture. There was a stiff wind up this day. It was coming from that side. So these are actual marks that I'm making, so I have to take care to where am I directing the viewer's attention. A little bit of randomness, a little bit of deliberateness, just like life. Now for some stronger darks, I want to keep this surface wet. I might go for the Prussian, because that's my darkest blue. Looks black in the palette. And a little bit of alizarin to get a kind of a dull purple. I find that when you've got greens, and these marks are going to be there will probably be none back in this area, certainly none back here, because here's where it's closest to us, and that's where I can see between the leaves. I want to be very careful to space these in a random fashion, because if I get them too regimented, they're going to look mechanical, despite the fact that a machine planted these things in very even rows. So, might even splatter some. You can push something like that. I can suggest a bit of diagonalness by having more of these things on this side than that side, and that might help. As I get closer, these marks can be larger. As they go further back in space, much smaller and closer together, just like the ties on a railroad track. Might even make them a little lighter as they go back too. That could help. This may not be the last time I go in and work on something like this. Let's make a little bit more purplish. The reason for the purple is it's a rough complement of the green. So if the illuminated portion of the thing and the shadowed portion of the thing are slightly different, it won't look like just a value change, it'll be a hue change as well. And all little dumb things like that always tend to help. These little light spots, they can be tinted later when it's dry. I'm just leaving myself some options at the moment. Okay, I think that's where I want to go with that. I can always come back and add more. It's always good to know when enough is enough. Now, in this instance, I want to start working from the distance forward. So I'm going to take some ultramarine blue, and these tree lines, which I'm willing to bet are more or less probably very much the same species. I can't paint them all the same green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little tester on this group here. Maybe a little greener. So I'm going to start executing some of these little tree lines. So it's good to know where the base of the tree line is. And hopefully I haven't lost that. Doing this. So I've got a big clump. I've got some small ones that are, there's some standalone ones. As I go left, I'm going to add some of the lavender to that to make it bluer. Let's get a little bit of that green too. It needs to be bluer. Let's get some more blue. Okay. Flat bottom areas make the shape irregular at the top and flat at the bottom, and it'll help look like a tree line. The further the way they are, too, watch out, especially when you're painting on location, that when you look at those distant tree lines back there, you'll see quite a bit of up and down as the different sized trees and things. You'll probably even see individual leaves because your eye will adjust for that distance. What you want to do is see that big shape while your primary vision is here or maybe even here, and this is in your peripheral vision. And you'll see this thing that looked like when you were staring it down out there, it's not like this anymore. It's more of a flat line. So watch that so that you don't get too many ropey lines in your distance. I'm going to put a bit, I'm going to go into some gee whiz, some cerulean on this. Maybe even a little ultramarine. I want this to be bluish. It gets very bluish over there. It's probably not even blue enough. So while it's wet, I'm going to feed in a similar consistency of straight up ultramarine. Further away they are, the bluer they get. Stiffer mix of lavender for the most distant ones. Looking at it, I'm seeing a little bit of a glare, so I have to maybe hopefully not stick my head in this. That plus a bit of water, maybe even some, a bit of water, I think, for the very, very distant ones going up here. Remember, atmospheric perspective, grayer, bluer, lighter. That sort of gets us over to Platteville. In the far distance, we've got the bluffs in Dubuque. So, okay, now something I can do, I'm down a bit. I can always put in extras, little standalone trees later. But what I want to do is create the darker, shadier spots underneath the bases of these trees. And I'm going to go right into the ultramarine, very slow moving. I'm going to have to do it over here. And a little bit of the, well, yeah, not much, just a tiny bit of the alizarin. And I'm going to touch the bottom edge, and a bit of it is going to bleed uphill because the area is still slightly moist. I'm not going to see much, maybe even any of that further back, but the closer I get, the more of the side or the base of the tree will be visible to me. And we're going to do some of those. So I don't want to go much farther back than that. Okay. And it's eventually going to look like something, I promise. I'm going to frame these individual trees with a dark area there. Okay, now I've got these trees. Let's get some ultramarine, a little bit of, very small amount of the Nicolazzo yellow. This group in here. It's a dark green. If you squint, it drops in with this area over here. But it's a more vivid green than what we have been looking at. So here it comes. Try to miss my silos. And I'm painting all the way down, and we're going to do a same thing we just did there. Whoops. It's a lean-to shed now. Remember, you can always make your hip roof barn a regular barn if you overshoot it. Let's put a little bit more of that green in there, a little bit of cerulean, just to make it different. When you're modulating your greens like this, the only thing you have to do is keep the value the same, and they'll stay pretty much in the same distance or space. What you don't want to do is modulate the value too much. So you're modulating the hue, but you don't want to modulate the value. Now here we go. I'm going to get some of the Prussian or the ultramarine, very slow moving paint, and the alizarin, mostly the ultramarine. And I'm going to do the base areas of these trees. So this is stiffer paint into an already wet, moist area, so I will get an irregular shape. And because the light is coming from mostly from above and over on the left, the majority of these darker areas are going to be from the 2 o'clock to 6, maybe 7 o'clock position on these shapes. Let's see, there are some different character of greens, I guess shrubs or something. So I'm going to put a little bit of the cad yellow and this blue mix over here. Maybe some lavender, and I'm going to get a little bit in here, suggest some foliage that's of a different variety. And then there's the front of a field of corn. Now we've got this area back in here, a bit more lavender in that, or even cerulean. Oh, I overdid it. There's looks like combinations of corn and beans, so these are lines that are leading us through the painting. So they're not corn. For our purposes, they're directionals. Now we've got some my trees that I described as stoppers, keep the eye from running out. Let's go for some of that same sort of thing we did here. And then rinse that, blot that, get the excess water off, get some of that right out of the pocket, ultramarine blue, touch it in. Let's get a little bit stronger in here too. And here as well. Maybe even there. Okay. So I'm going to let that dry. In fact, I'm going to take the hairdryer to it. So I'm going to need to step away for a second and get that. Okay, back to this. Now, I can take my eraser and take away any stray pencil lines that I don't want to show. And now I'm going to start painting these silos and buildings. And this is the point where we will start to make this look like what it's supposed to be. Smaller brush, pointier brush maybe. Silos. Actually, I'm going to get some of that dull purple. A little bit of yellow ochre, because yellow and purple are rough complements. I need a dull bluish grayish. Okay, let's get some of that, some of this. I need a bluish gray. And let's see. They're a little bit lighter on their left. That may be the auger. I'm not sure. The bill a little bit brighter blue. So I put some ultramarine into that gray mix. On the side of this lean-to shed. And the barn proper is going to be classic red. Now I can touch into that some of this same stuff up here and make the right side a little darker. And because it's wet, it'll bleed around and hopefully look cylindrical. Same thing with this shed down here. Let's get some of that blue. That I'm going to let that dry because we want a lighter color on the. Oh, let's put a little bit of a very, very, very pale turquoise on the cupola of the silos. I'll use that. Oh yeah, okay, turquoise and a little bit of water for the side of the shed and lean-to. The barn. It's a deep dark red. We're going to need to mix up a spot for that. Cad red. Maybe some neutral tint. Yeah, maybe some ultramarine. It's pretty dark. Maybe not that dark. Rinse it, blot it. There we go, that's a little better. Try to make it a hip roof. You may need to do a little bit of reshaping on that. If you don't like what you've done, blot that a bit. Very carefully take that right too. I'm going to have to get some of the ultramarine and reshape the back side of the barn here. There we go. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to put a little bit something there, a little bit of an eave shadow under this, a little bit of an eave shadow under that, maybe some doors. I'm going to put some miscellaneous small marks. One thing I do need is a cast shadow from this tree onto that area over there. Some directional lines in bluish green throughout these areas. Perhaps a little bit of that up here. Being careful not to go too far back. I might splatter some of that. Into this area. Again, watch where the point is going. And then give them a smear. There's some miscellaneous foliage in this area, in this area. I think I can start putting in a few more of these random leaves, corn leaves. Again, I want to keep them close. I don't want to have them going too far back. And then I also think, where else? Okay, so the barn is dry enough on the one side that I can take a lighter red over here and then wait for that for a second, and then I'll put an eave shadow under it. While I'm here, I can get some blue and put a bit of an eave shadow under that one. I think I need to clean up this edge here. That needs to be dark. There as well. We could throw in a utility pole back here. Now, we don't want to put that right in the middle. We want to have it a little over here or a little over here. It would seem to make the most sense to be closer to the structures. And maybe even one over here. They'll always be near buildings. Some miscellaneous darks there. I'm going to put eve shadow under that. Some openings, maybe a couple of windows. More texture here. So, let's see, bigger brush. Tester, yeah. I'm going to blot that a bit so that I get a rough mark. It's kind of a dry brush. Just try to suggest that we're switching from one crop to another crop. Same thing, a little bit of water to the mix we had over here. Same thing, maybe some, maybe too much? No. Stuff like this is really good for creating blossoms and irregular marks. We want them in places like this. We don't want them in, say, a pool of water or something like that. So if you've got any of these little light spots, what else could we do? Let's get some lavender on its own. Let's make this a little more mysterious back here. This is a glaze. A glaze is whenever you apply a runny mix of paint to a very dry, previously painted area. Maybe a little bit of that here. A little bit of that here. Perhaps even in there. Just to variegate a bit. There we go. I'm going to detape and see what we get. This is the stage where I'll look at it and decide if I want to add something here, take out something there. So right away, I can tell I'd still like a little bit of kind of what you might call underlining for our main focal area. I'm going to put some irregular little scruffy trees. Here. Maybe one here to kind of put this in front of that. I want a little more dark in that area. And some of this grayish, bluish green. Over there. Maybe just a few things in here. Okay. So when that dries and it's settled down, I think I'll make any last decisions. So that's kind of our tree series. Not kind of, that is our tree series. Foliage. What I want to do is I'm going to mat these up. There's 4 of them. There's this one that we've just done. There's one that we did previously. Here's the one from last week, Waterworks Park. And here was the first one on our group. There'd be the 2 from Chautauqua Park. I'm going to mat them up. And, oops, we don't want that. I'm going to mat those up. And if you come onto Cindy's and make a purchase anytime between now and Christmas, we'll put your name in the hat. And you could win one of these matted paintings. So, the hours are Wednesdays through Fridays, 1 to 5, Saturdays, 12 to 4. We have everything you could possibly want. Everything that I used today to paint Cindy stocks. We're at 53 West Broadway on the north side of the Fairfield Square. And it's a wonderful small business worth supporting. I love being able to come right down the street here and get a tube of something when you run out. It's nothing worse than running out of something than having to wait for Amazon to deliver it or Dick Blick to deliver it. So come on in, get your art supplies, great prices. Today, if you come in, it's 10% off. Art supplies, other than the M. Graham paints, which are always at the lowest possible price they can be sold. They're allowed to be sold. The manufacturer has scruples. And we'll be making the drawing just before Christmas. So come on down. Maybe win yourself a drawing, but definitely get some great art supplies. So thank you all for tuning in, and maybe I'll run into some of you guys. I come in on Thursdays and Saturdays. So I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.